Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's the 13th of July. Today is a holiday, part of a 4-day weekend in Russia. And of course, they just can't let us have a friggin' day of quiet. No, no. The Israelis struck Iran. We know that. And what's coming out, at least in the Israeli newspapers, is they struck Iran, very similarly. I'm sorry, exactly the same as they struck our bases. There's been lots of speculation that Mossad has been all over Ukraine. It has. And now there's no doubting it because, exactly the same operation. They moved in a bunch of drones over a long period of time into Iran. And then they used those drones. They murdered people in their sleep, government officials. I think the second in command of the military, head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And they did it on. We had to do it because they're about to get nuclear weapons. The same crap that war criminal, that Nazi Netanyahu, has been saying for the last 30 friggin' years. Just in 2 weeks, you're going to get it. By the way, for you Americans, how many died in Iraq? How America spent something like $5 trillion? Thank Netanyahu. He was the number one witness at the congressional hearings pushing the U.S. to get into Iraq because they're about to have nuclear weapons. And you paid for it. Your greatest ally that ever existed, by the way, with which you don't have a single signed document of anything other than the receipts that your congressmen receive for all the money they get. And Mark Rubio, by the way, as one of them, formerly a senator, now Secretary of State or Minister of International Affairs, received $1.5 million from the Israeli lobby. Wonder where his interests are. When you've got senators, when you've got congressmen, let's just put it general, you have congressmen that refuse to serve in the U.S. Army, born in America, not in Israel, refused to serve in the U.S. Army, went to serve in the Israeli Army, are now in the U.S. government. You had one senator running around in his old Israeli uniform for like a month or 2 months. Your country isn't yours. You're a slave race to another nation's will. And you're about to be in the big war. Now, how nefarious does the Trump administration have to be? It is nefarious, obviously enough. Trump has admitted that they were briefed and they knew this was going to happen. So the guys that are having negotiations with Iran, they're having negotiations with Iran. Not peace negotiations, but negotiations to avoid the conflict, because the Iranians have done everything they can from less than even proportional attacks back to just ignoring certain attacks from a mad dog called Netanyahu, who's going to murder off his own Jews in Israel because, for the big war, he cannot win. But he's going to try anyways because the alternative is going to jail. And possibly quite a few American senators might be found out just how much money they're really on the take for and willing to throw the entire country to war for. And the entire U.S. economy is possibly going to be crashing down very soon. Because let's review a few things of what is about to happen. So the U.S. has allowed Israel, because honestly, if the U.S. had a pair of balls and maybe a couple spinal, a couple bones in its supposed spinal cord, it could have actually just said to Bibi, settle down, dumbass. Settle the hell down, or we cut you off. And then you and your nation dies. But no. The U.S. is owned lock, stock, and barrel, like a good little bought strumpet. So the U.S. Trump has admitted that he knew this was going to happen while carrying on good faith negotiations. What good faith is there in the U.S. empire? None. The empire of lies, deceit, and evil, I don't know how else to call it, has just shown its face one more time. So it's carrying good faith negotiations, knowing the Israelis are about to attack. Because, the question was, how did they get through the Russian air defense systems that are in Iran and the Iranian radar? Well, they were already inside the country. They've killed a lot of people. They hit civilian nuclear facilities. Now there's a possibility of radiation leaks. And Trump, with his big mouth, comes out with, oh, yeah, kind of should have done what I told you, because now people have died and we're just going to kill all of you if you don't surrender right now. I'm paraphrasing from his long tweet. Mr. Multimedia there that pays more attention to what the hell's written on X than what's actually going on under his own nose. So yeah, there we go with that. Now it's gotten to a point, the Israelis they absolutely need Iran to respond. Iran will respond because, this is probably the attack too far. The Israelis have lost support amongst the Europeans that have been their slaves for years. Even that idiot walking moron called Merz finally actually said something right. We're not going to support the Israelis. Of course, one Nazi's not supporting the other Nazi. That's interesting enough. Little bad blood between their granddads. Israel itself is in a total proxy war with Russia. And I'm getting to this because this is about to get bigger. And it will get bigger because Iran is, for Russia, too big to fail for several reasons. And it is an existential crisis for Russia. A little less than Ukraine, but it is. And why is it an existential crisis for Russia? It's not for America, because Iran didn't attack anybody. And by the way, Iranians are anti-Jews? Seriously? The Jewish minority in Iran, which, by the way, has a parliament member, so do the Orthodox Christians, so even do the Zoroastrians. The Zoroastrians are not the people of the book. So in Islam, it doesn't even have to recognize them as anything more than pagans or idolaters. But they have a representative in the Iranian parliament. True, they don't obviously have a majority. They're one-offs, but they're minority populations. Iran is a republic. And America and its owner, Israel, out to murder another republic. Go figure. America's killed off more republics in its history than any other country, any non-Republican country could have ever dreamed of. There's actually theories, there's these idiotic theories that are taught to American university students. And I remember being taught one such theory that two republics can never go to war with each other because they represent the will of the people. It's on the same level as two countries that have McDonald's in them. Yeah, there's actually a theory like that. There was until at least the Russian-Ukrainian war, and I think that actually a Russian-Georgian affair. Two countries with McDonald's can never go to war with each other. Yeah, it's moronic. People come up with these idiotic theories, I guess, to get their name out because they can't think of anything else. So there's that on the spot. There's that. So the Israelis, like I said, they've launched this attack. Russia cannot let Iran fall because Iran is the doorway to the Caucasus and to Central Asia, and thus to the Russian Northern Caucasus and to the Russian Western Siberian Plain. Because Russia's border with Kazakhstan is 3,000 plus kilometers. Let's begin with that. And then Georgia, for example, Georgia, which has now is closing down the joint EU and NATO center, which is located just off of Independence Plaza in the old city. That's being closed down. And the Georgians, they very smartly and quietly over the previous years got rid of their American-trained officers in the military and the police, which is why this Maidan or Color Revolution failed, because the next step was for portions of the military and the police to come over to the side of the protesters. They got rid of the American-trained people, fired them off, got rid of them one way or the other, and the people that were there are Orthodox Christians and they specifically got Orthodox Christians into those positions because the American-backed Pride Parade, anti-Christian, anti-church, anti-Georgian cultural revolutionaries had absolutely nothing to offer these people, except maybe naked raw power and just knowing that you're a Judas and you're going to be burning in hell. And it worked. It worked. That's why the Maidan failed. Biggest issue. And a lot of the ingrained fifth column bureaucrats, they did come out for the Maidan and they identified themselves and they were fired. So they helped purge themselves. I mean, Georgia's not cleaned out by any means. Russia's not cleaned out. We still have lots of cleaning to do because America for 20 years was moving its people into positions, and those people were moving other people like-minded into positions. So it's like a weed with very, very extensive roots. So that takes a long while, unfortunately, to get rid of. So for Russia, Iran is an existential crisis. Just a little less than Ukraine. Ukraine's a little closer to the heart for various reasons that Iran isn't. But Iran guards the doorway to Georgia and then thus northern Russian Caucasus and into Central Asia. While the Americans are still getting into Central Asia, and sort of the British and the French, it's much more difficult for them to move material and people in. And if Iran is gone, then that becomes a much easier route. And that is a big problem. Russia cannot allow Iran to fall just for that reason alone. Never mind, Russia has a defensive agreement with Iran. And under no circumstances would Russia back Iran if Iran was the initiator of hostilities. Iran is not the initiator of hostilities. Russia will back Iran. It has the same type of agreement that it has with North Korea. U.S. obviously, or Trump is absolutely assed up ignorant, is so ramped up on their own stupidity and ego that they can't count what's going to happen. First of all, if Iran just wants to cripple the U.S. economy, which, by the way, U.S. imports something like 8 million barrels of oil a day. Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, while the Permian Basin is shrinking, and it's been shrinking for several months now off of the high that it got to, because basically, I'm surprised it hasn't shrunk earlier than that, because shale oil on average loses between 10 to 90% of the volume of production every single year. While your average well, conventional oil well, can go up to 10, 15, 20, some 30, 40 years, especially with the newer technologies that will repressurize the wells or use other methods to move oil up the well when the natural pressure drops off. U.S. is very linked to the Middle East, whether it likes it or not. So what happens is the Strait of Hormuz that go right between Oman and Iran. And the Strait of Hormuz are extremely shallow waters. There's like 11 or 12 canals that are dug deep and made for tankers and other such heavy ships to go through. So all you really do is you don't even need to wait for a tanker. You just move some of your smaller yachts or corvettes or what have you in those canals and scuttle them in place. That's it. Nothing gets moved. Never mind that, by the way, those canals are on overwatch from land to sea missiles fired out of the mountains that are in southern Iran. Those mountains have lots of caves, man-made and natural caves, and they have lots of missile launchers. It does not take much to make sure no oil moves. That's 32 to 33% of the world's oil. Just stops. Think about. Oh, and let's get the bone-crushing sanctions from Lindsey, the I am as corrupt as the moon is full, Graham. I mean, he's so friggin' corrupt. He makes McCain look like a choir boy. My God, this man is disgusting in every concept that you can think of, and it's actually finally starting to come back to bite him. Though I'm sure with this, the Israeli lobby will make sure to clean their choir boy as much as possible, because they own the American system. They own America, inside and out. I mean, my God, you can sit there and as a university student, scream America is crap. As a foreign international student in America, you can scream America is crap. I want it to burn, go to hell. But the moment you say something against Israel, you get expelled. I mean, you talk about screwed, yeah. Sorry, a little emotional. Priorities. You have priorities in the U.S. I mean, you got about half the states in the U.S. If your company doesn't support Israel, you can't get projects with the states. And now, by the way, anti-Semitism is Semites are a protected class. So you have for the first time in the U.S., you have an entire nationality that is a protected nationality, not the nationalities that make up the core of the Americas, but a separate nationality makes up about 3% of the population. Is not a protected nationality in the U.S. You know what? Those that you could not criticize are those that own you. Think about it. Think about it. And that it's insane. So Iran's gonna, and then there's the fact that Iran can hit back. They can hit back just as hard on Israel's nuclear power plant, which happens to be in the middle of the country, not a big country. So they can contaminate the crap out of Israel. Never mind level Israel. But that's going to draw the U.S. into that big war. Now, what can the U.S. do? It can't invade Iran. It can barely invade a shoe shop right now, the way the U.S. military is set up, let alone Iran. The U.S. military would get nowhere close to Iran for any kind of Marine Corps invasion in those shallow waters that have been sunk. And it would take, you're looking at a mountainous country. This isn't Iraq with a flat desert and half a year to build up. Nobody's going to give the U.S. that kind of time. This is a mountainous country for the most part, forested and mountainous. And the southern parts on the coast are all mostly mountainous. And the Iranians are going to defend that every inch of those mountains. That's 100 million people. Think about that. Ain't enough Americans to invade Iran and hold it at this present time. Sure, the British were able to do it when they outgunned the Iranians, and the Iranians weren't very organized, and they just bought out the government back in the heydays. But today it's a little bit of a different situation, especially when Iran has very, very precision guided missiles, ballistic and hypersonic missiles. So, and never mind the drones. So the U.S. has got a big problem on its hands. Now it can continue to try to pummel. Now, there's been radar systems that have been damaged by drones. This was a hit from inside. This was a big hit from inside. But Iran, it took a licking, but it's not out of the game. It's not even off of its feet. And then we'll see how it goes. Now, I will be shocked out of my hide if Iran decides to go, okay, U.S., let's negotiate. Especially understanding what the U.S. is. If there's any doubt, the nefarious, duplicitous nature of the U.S. government. We're not going to talk about Israel, for God's sakes. You know what you're dealing with there. Psychopathic supremacists, racial supremacists. Which, by the way, I never understood I understand why the evangelical Christians back them, because they want the end of the world. And they need a pure religious Israeli state to build the third temple so they can get Armageddon going so they don't get to die. And they just get beamed away and raptured to heaven. Yes, they're damn friggin' insane. And this is absolutely non-Christian theology. Rapture is a heretical theology that was created in the 1830s. In the UK, by the way. So, and they're basing it all off of that, and they're moving toward the end of the world. It's a death cult. This is a gigantic, biggest death cult in the world. It took me 2 years to get that explained in Russia to the authorities and the media and etc. Because everyone's like, why are they doing this? Why are they doing? Israel abuses Christians, Orthodox Christians, Catholic Christians, Armenian Christians, constantly get abused. Nuns, monks, priests get spat on, they get hit. Churches get graffitied, get rocks thrown at them, occasionally get firebombed. and nobody ever gets arrested. Because the plurality of Israel, right. But that's the reality of it. That is the reality of how life is. But the evangelicals support it. Even when Israel bombs a Baptist hospital in the Gaza, no problem. Because they're out for end of the world. They need an ethnically pure, religiously pure Israel. Jewish Israel, that's, sea to sea. The Israelis, actually, the Israelis not sea to sea, it's river to river, Euphrates to the Nile. And for all those who still think that's a conspiracy theory, was it Galam, the financial minister, in an interview a year ago, explained that all. Plus, you see the patches a lot of the Israeli soldiers are wearing now. Sea to river to river. Those two lines on the Israeli flag, by the way. The Zionist dream, off of a manuscript somewhere from about 2,500, 3,000 years ago. So add that to racial superiority theory, and you get what you get. You get a psychopath willing to start World War III, knowing that the Americans are a spineless owned commodity, and they will go to war and die in mass for the owner. So Americans, are you going to go to war and die in mass for your owners? Comment by all means. I'd love to hear it, because your government's damn well on track for that. They're pot and paid, and you're at 0 hour at the moment. And again, Russia's not going to allow Iran to fall, and China is not going to allow Iran to fall either. And considering Iran is also one of the biggest suppliers of India, and if we get those bone crushing sanctions, let's get another 10% of the oil off the market. So look at 40% of the oil off the market. How much do you think you're going to be paying for gasoline? U.S. imports almost 30% of its oil, 8 million barrels a day. How much do you think you're going to be paying? Honestly speaking, ready for your economy to crash, get crushed? I mean, you're already paying higher prices on tariffs, and those portions of Trump's tariffs that the companies are sucking up. Yay, the companies are sucking up. What do you think is going to happen toward the end of this year when it's tax time for the corporations and their profits go boop? Yeah, they pay a hell of a lot less taxes. Or maybe if they can write off enough of it, they actually get money out of the government. And you, the tax sucker in the end, gets to pay more for the goods, and you're probably going to have your taxes raised, or the deficit goes up. The deficit always goes up, and it just goes up a lot faster, and your money becomes much more worthless, and you just get to pay a hell of a lot more on all your goods, because the buying power of the U.S. dollar is crap as it is. It's less than 1% of what it was in 1913. Think about that. The year the IRS was created. And the same year that I think that was the year of the IRS, but the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. In 1913, I think it was the Federal Reserve also was created. And then was it 1913 or maybe 1918? I think 1913. I have to look that up. Unfortunately, I seem to have forgotten that. So yeah, and then what? And what happens is your buying power has gone to nothing. Less than 1%. So that's what you're facing with right now. I mean, this is the insanity of the modern U.S. And that's what you're stuck with. Fully stuck with. So how is this going to go? Well, I don't know. Unless Trump somehow gets his head out of his ass. I'm not counting on that too much, but you never know. He might. Unless he does something like that and stops this after Iran has retaliated. Because this is the typical crap right now is going on. Oh, please, all sides need to downscale, be peaceful, and not shoot at each other. Iran, don't shoot back. So Israel, that's the exception of all humanity, except for America, which is the dog of Israel and the exception of all humanity. So I'm not quite sure how that works out, who's the more exceptional of all humanity. Gets to hit first, then run away. Oh, we're victims. See, the Iranians want to hit us. We're victims. And everybody tells her, oh, no, no, Iranians, don't shoot back. Take the high road. Let them murder your officials. Let them murder your citizens. You shouldn't hit them back. They're special. That doesn't work very well. And then you've got the Egyptians, who are on the brink of revolution. The Jordanians are on the brink of revolution. The Turks are now starting to butt up against, more closer against the Israelis. Now, how wide can this war go? Oh, it can go pretty damn wide. And it can quite easily lead to a non-existent Israel and a hell of a lot of dead Israelis, as in millions. But at this point, for Netanyahu and his regime of psychopaths, it's either win everything or die trying. And if they die trying, of course, they're going to release all their nuclear weapons everywhere, because that's what psychopaths do. And since the U.S. has absolutely zero control over this group of psychopaths. But by the way, as I said, Israel is at war with Russia. It flat out is. The same fingerprints of Mossad that are all over this attack on Iran are all over the attack that the Ukrainians carried out. Mossad's been all over the place since the first months of this war in Ukraine. The Israelis have been allowing Israeli IDF soldiers, or former IDF soldiers, but they're all in reserves. They're never really formal until their old age, to fly with their weapons, with their automatic weapons, to fly to Ukraine. The ones that that came from Ukraine, or born in Ukraine, or parents were born in Ukraine, or some of them have absolutely nothing to do with Ukraine, fly and fight for the Israelis. Quite a few of them are hopefully burning in hell by now. I know they've been destroyed, quite a few of them have been destroyed. And on top of that, out in the open, we get that Netanyahu has just sent Patriot missiles to Ukraine. So there's that. And we don't know how much he's sent other than that. Drones, for example, surveillance equipment, missiles. We don't know. We don't know. But it's there. So there you go. This is where the world is standing at this moment. We are quite literally on the brink of a very, very large war. Don't make too many plans for the summer. You might not get to experience, at least don't put any deposits down. We'll see where we're all wound up by the end of the summer, in which trenches and foxholes everybody's at. Britain's colliding down toward a civil war. Ireland is boiling into a civil war. And the good thing about all of this is there's a contagion effect. There's a contagion effect across Europe. So who goes first doesn't mean that's going to be the last. There's a good chance that once one goes, a hell of a lot of other countries are going to go in the EU. And the EU just might find itself to have the summer of ill content boiling over and exploding coming up for this. So, and this is going to be a multifaceted civil war in any of these countries. It may start with different nationalities and different slices of the population against each other, but it'll grow. That's how they do. As one community after another community gets sucked into a quagmire, well, not even a quagmire, whirlpool of violence, revenge, more revenge, violence, and so on. So it'll be an interesting summer and fall, and hopefully we'll get to see Christmas, and not a nuclear Christmas before that. So we'll live and see. But yeah, the Israelis, it has been warnings, and the U.S. has been moving non-combat personnel. By the way, there's 60,000 American soldiers between short and medium range ballistic missile strikes from Iran. Iran can do a hell of a lot of body count damage on Americans. Think about that. And if you think Saudi Arabia is going to go to war with Iran, it's not. Any Iranian hit on an American base, that's American sovereign property. That's what those agreements, SOFA agreements, are for. Part of that's American sovereign property. So that's not an attack on Saudi Arabia. That's not an attack on Kuwait. That's not an attack on Abu Dhabi. That's an attack just on American property. And America's at war with Iran. So Iran is fully within its rights. So we'll see. We'll see. things have just got a lot more complicated thanks to the owners of America. So Americans, let me know, how does it feel to be owned? Lock, stock, and barrel. And how many of you are ready to watch your sons go and your daughters go die for the people that own you? God bless. So part 2. Now, a lot of you saw my report on the 1,212 bodies in the 4 refrigeration trucks in Bryansk, or just outside of Bryansk, that had already gone to the front, and they left after we left. They went to the front again to give those bodies over. And I videotaped inside when they opened up one of those 40-foot containers. Now, so there were another 4,800 plus bodies in a refrigerated train. The second time they went down, they weren't taken again. I mean, this is the level of subhuman scum, because a lot of people say, oh, they didn't do it because they don't have the money to pay for it. No, it's not even that. It's not even close to that. I'll tell you why. It was because they passed a law that said that once the body or the person is identified as dead, not missing in action, but dead, 2 years, not after the death certificate, but 2 years after the end of the war, which has never been declared. So when does that 2 years even start? And then the Rada said, oh, not 2 years. Let's do 3 years after. Then we'll start paying. Because part of the payment is $350,000 per person, plus support for the family. So, I mean, obviously, almost nobody's gotten any money out of these families. I mean, in a lot of these families, these were the main breadwinners. I mean, these are middle-aged guys that were just stripped off the streets. We're not talking about even the guys that volunteered for a military service or were already in the Ukrainian military before that, or these Nazi brigades. Plenty of them. Azov is just one of them. There's Tornado. There's a whole wave of these guys. There's I think about a dozen of these Nazi brigades, battalions/brigades. Most of them started as battalions and grew their way to brigade regiment size. So these people aren't going to get anything. And it gets worse, which I'll get to in a second. Because in the end, the third time they did take the bodies. But I'll tell you in a second how it went. So you got Zelensky. I mean, if you doubted that you were meat as a Ukrainian citizen or a soldier, biomaterial to be used up and thrown away, I mean, how can you still doubt that? And a lot of them do doubt that. It's the amazing part. Is they go along. I mean, you're just meat to be used. And you get used, abused, killed off, and then thrown away. And they're not even going to come back to get you so you can be buried by your family, who's also biomaterial for those elites that are sitting there. I mean, this is the amazing thing about all this. And again, like I said, they continue to fight. They continue to fight. They continue to die. And they're dying in mass. The lines are collapsing. They're running back. I mean, again, this isn't a war. I mean, this isn't the way I was taught war. And most every officer in my generation in Russia, in America, and most everywhere else, were not taught to fight this way. We're not taught maneuver warfare. And Soviets and Russians were taught maneuver warfare. Obviously, with drones, things changed very radically. Because if you minus the drones out of this, Russia would be doing the maneuver warfare right now, in mass maneuver. It's got the tanks, it's got the manpower, it's got the artillery superiority. In some areas, it's a 15 to 20 to 1 superiority in artillery. It's got the aviation. It should have maneuver warfare. But Russia's also trying to conserve its military, keep the casualties down, which Ukraine obviously doesn't care about because the Ukrainian leadership just looks at this as biomaterial to be used, maximized, and earned off of. And the West just doesn't give a damn. Again, these aren't real people to the Western leadership. And these 6,000 in all, that's 10%. That's 10% of the casualties or the Ukrainian military carried in Kursk alone. There's 60,000 killed. About 10,000 of them are mercs, well, NATO soldiers, plus Colombian mercs and people like that. I mean, the Poles got about 2,000 bodies, right, that've been identified as Poles, and they're still finding people, and they'll be finding people for quite a long time in those deep forests. Honestly, if I was Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, I would drive those bodies in refrigerated trucks out to the Belarusian-Polish border, and I would post the names of those 2,000 Poles everywhere, and have their family members come pick up their corpses, or the remains of those corpses, at the Polish-Belarusian border. Because that would be a smack upside those idiots in the Polish government. Such a smack, like a baseball bat breaking upside the cranium. And that's what they need. Poles need a friggin' wake up. This is just the beginning. And they've lost 8,000 soldiers. I mean, the news is kept down. The burials go. Because these are all officially mercs. The whole battalion's becoming mercs and then coming back and becoming battalions again. Shit-dipped mercs. But yeah, these guys, I mean, this is how these guys are fighting. So this is 10%. The reason they don't want these bodies back is because once the burial wave starts and people are gathering and the anger goes, they're not so sure they're going to control that anger. So they'd rather those bodies lay there and rot. And never mind, by the way, a lot of those commanders at the battalion and brigade level, they're making money off those corpses because as long as they're missing in action, there's a paycheck coming. And those paychecks are wired to their credit cards or their bank cards. So that's how that works. Now, back to the subject. They took those bodies, but under the condition that those families refuse not only all payments, period, all stop, but that they refuse even to have the government pay for the burials. And they did. They wanted the bodies back. I mean, these are husbands, fathers, sons, uncles, sometimes grandfathers. So they took them back. Daughters, too. So they took them back, and they paid. I mean, they seriously paid. So that's what we're dealing with. This is what we're dealing with. This is the subhuman scum that we are dealing with. God bless God bless humanity when you have this kind of people in charge. Anyways, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, spread to your friends, share it. If you want to support me, by all means, my wallet, Bitcoin wallet number is in there. You can whatever you want, 1 pence to to whatever sum you decide. But at least let people know. Spread this out. God bless.